Aaron, we have Acer's MMA.
Nods to you.
Yeah, he's his opponent, who's had a pretty interesting year as far as Terran versus Terran is concerned. Representing Cooler Master Storm, he is Polt. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the way the supply depots are positioned, it's very easy for the SCB that finishes it to go right on and build the gas. It's super standard in this matchup. You can have a fast Hellion Marine attack with a medevac at your opponent's base at approximately 6 minutes. You know, you can have a Banshee there before 7 minutes. There's so many things to be worried about that even if you want to play defensively, you still need to go gas first.
Yeah. It's kind of a funny thing that you bring up because, you know, I've obviously been a big proponent of mech overall.
Oh, of course.
In StarCraft 2, some of you may have heard, I've labeled it even as the most cost-efficient unit composition in the game. Some people may agree with that, but you know, in StarCraft 1, when we didn't have this unit called the Marauder and the Marine was a lot worse.
Yeah.
You would always open up gas. Like, it was very rare to see anything but a quick gas because you just had to get in those factory units. They were just too powerful. The starport units too powerful. And I actually kind of like seeing TVT go back to that as well.
Yeah, it's certainly become a much more fast-paced matchup. And, you know, if any Terran players out there that go on the ladder, like, you see these types of strategies almost every single game. Going for a Reaper expand, like those types of builds that were popular in the last season's map pool, you didn't have like too much airspace around your base. But like, if you look at MMA's base, there is no dead wall that you're going to hit trying to drop. Like behind Polt's mineral line, like you can't go really away from the main from there. But in MMA's base, you can go all the way into the dead space in the southeast. You can go to the natural. There's very few points where you can't come in with a medevac or a Banshee, and that gives Polt the advantage if he wants to go for a big drop play later on in this game. It's a lot of space to cover.
And that's exactly why I have this map thumbs down.
Yeah, it was a very tricky one. Like, because some Terran players wouldn't even thumbs this down because you could still do sick Reaper plays against Zerg players, and it's very easy to drop Protoss on this map. So,
well, I'm a Protoss, so that's why.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a terrible amount of sense. Neither player has taken a quick second gas,
An awful amount of sense.
It looks like they're both going to do this really quick Hellion Marine medevac elevator, and this is like the build I usually do myself, and it's very, very strong because if you follow up with like a fast Viking and save one scan, you can hold off most Banshee attacks from your opponent. The quick reactor from Polt doesn't need to say much. Like, it's only really weak against a Reaper if it runs in since you have a single Marine, but it's technically better. It's just a little bit riskier because you get more Marine production just later.
I want to ask you, Nathaniel, so which one of these players do you put down as the player with stronger micromanagement?
For a control individual units?
Yeah.
I actually don't think I could really pick between the two. They're both quite good in scrappy low unit count situations.
You know, that's what we always used to see back when these two were battling out in the GSL Code S. And I'm trying to think back. I'm like, no, I mean, they were pretty similar overall. I always counted Polt as a little bit more aggressive overall. But we'll see if that's the way it turns out here, as they are doing the exact same build order at the moment. Yeah.
The reactor will help with the response. So we see the situation, right? You move your 2 Hellions out, or your 2-3 Hellions as Polt, or as MMA in this instance. Now this Hellion's seeing the medevac. Polt can just try to be defensive at home, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to load his medevac. Because he has the reactor, he has the quote-unquote advantage as far as the build orders are concerned, since he can produce more units. But if he staves this off, it opens up counterattack possibilities. However, Polt's MMA is just doing this is how you do this build. You get everything in here. The Hellions target the Marines, but really good shot from Polt initially, and that's quite bad. The medevac can only heal 1 unit at a time. Great use of splash and a phenomenal defense from Polt.
And look at that, Polt taking a little bit of a lead to start out here.
And this second medevac is really interesting because Polt has a massive counterattack opportunity now if he can get both of those into MMA's base, since he's building this tech lab now, and whether or not he moves to tanks or Banshees, both of them are actually too slow to really deal with mobile medevac forces. And the fact that Polt's building a third medevac is really quite brave. The Marines he's going to be making at home can do a reasonable job of defending against this as long as he pulls SCVs, because the damage he wants to do back at MMA's base, since he has nothing really there to defend, could be astronomical. Like, there's a tank on the way, but 30 seconds when there's 2 medevacs about to hit you, that's really tough to deal with.
Well, he has 2 or 3 Vikings right now, but they're not in position to do anything against this. He does drop off a lot of Marines and Hellions here.
Hellions do a really good job
man.
versus SCVs. The Marines are going to soak up the SCV's fire, but he's completely shut down the economy of MMA. He's killed almost every single SCV that he has. This is TVT now, man. You make that attack, your attack fails, the counter comes, and you do lose all of your workers. Now, MMA at the very least got to pick up a couple, but he's killed 5 SCVs compared to 24 that Polt's killed in this game.
There's no coming back from that, right? Unless he drops right now and kills as many SCVs,
like,
I don't know what he would do.
He needs to make this tank, like this counter push, like it's become like a bit of a seesaw. And if Polt holds this without taking economic damage, the game is pretty much in the bag because he still has this medevac, so he can go for an immediate counter attack and bypass the wall. If there's another tank waiting at home, he can just drop his units on top of that. And it's weird because these landed Vikings give him almost enough meat to break this, but it's still really tricky because you kind of need them in the air to deal with your opponent's medevac as well.
Well, right now he is landing up here and dropping off quite a few units in that medevac. We'll be able to lift the rest in as well.
Yeah,
and that is a pretty scary force.
Yeah, this needs to be pretty much everything here. Like MMA, he has enough forces to deal back, I think, a reasonable enough damage. Like Polt has to pull SCVs to defend this. There's no getting around that. And I think the tank in and of itself, because the Vikings are up front, when SCVs start hitting those, it's going to be borderline impossible, I think, for him to actually break this. I think MMA, this push might just be exactly what it needs. Polt's going to bring all of his SCVs. He's spread out his forces reasonably well, and he's getting on top of this. The tank actually not getting too much splash damage off on these Marines, and I love Polt actually spreading, just stepping forward an individual unit, allowing him to clean this up. This brings a total workers killed 24 versus 15. Polt is only up 6 SCVs, though.
Wow. Well, definitely very back and forth, very scrappy game. No one even starting command center, and as I say that, Polt finally does start one here. Maybe trying to build on his lead just a little bit, realizing he's definitely killed more SCVs than MMA has.
Yeah, getting that command center up is very important, but so far it looks like with the setup that MMA has, still building tanks, now getting a reactor on his starport. I think he's going to use this and maybe get more Marine production. The scan from Polt, you see how few SCVs there are, and at this factory with the tech lab, like if he was able to see this tank come out, then he knows that there's no way MMA was able to squeeze in a command center with this build. Like, he's going to make maybe one more push, but it's going to be quite difficult as Polt's now starting to lock down his main with tanks.
Well, he is actually killing off a few SCVs here. This is actually a pretty big deal. Some nice micro by MMA. Polt just slightly out of position there, and he pays for it.
Yep, 17 SCVs versus 14 now. Polt with a slight lead, but you mentioned that second command center. This is going to be a really big deal when he gets the extra access to mules, and if those Vikings getting dangerously close to where this medevac is, like killing this off is a really big deal. He does get very close, not able to unload the units. And that's a pretty game-winning move right there for Polt. Like, MMA wants to build medevacs now, but yeah, that's, oh boy.
Well, it looks like he wants to go ahead and counter push once again, realizing he's behind. This is going to be maybe his only chance to get back into this game right now. But Polt with his own siege tanks on the high ground with the second command center already done, it feels like an impossible task.
Yeah, breaking this is pretty much impossible. Like, at this point, even if he had his SCVs, like the choke point going up that ramp, he's going to get slaughtered. And just the number of tanks that Polt has, like maybe, if this somehow happened and these Vikings get pulled really far away, he does need every unit that he has to defend. But I also love, since his opponent's on one base, he only has one orbital, and Polt's like, yeah, actually just get a Banshee and get Cloak. And since I have air control with these Vikings, there's not really a whole lot you can do to contest this.
Well, that is actually quite a smart move, as you say there. Backing up right now. Looks like his Banshee actually already rallied to go straight to the base. Doesn't really need it for defense, since he does have the defender's advantage with those siege tanks. And even landing his orbital at that natural, I feel like MMA is missing any timing window he has to do damage.
Yeah, MMA has an opportunity to force this to lift off before these tanks get in position, but now they're in position. So dropping on these would be borderline suicide. And yeah, his tanks, his second one is able to fire, and that Marine actually soaking up a shot really nice for Polt as he's cleaned up the tanks MMA has on his side of the map. Like, MMA still has not yet started a command center. He has no forces. That Banshee's headed over towards his base. I think like the one Viking he has is positioned to catch it, but Cloak will be done within about 20 25 seconds.
Oh, man, this is looking just so bad for MMA. I have one question for you, Nathanius. Can this game last another 4 minutes?
Oh, I think we're lining up pretty well for that 15-minute timer, Artosis. It's looking pretty dicey here for our red Terran player. This Banshee comes in, it's like, yeah, he might scan and kill it, and then half of his economy is gone.
Well, mules are a little bit crazy like that, but he is
this
chased
responds,
out.
man. He's like, I could just hide behind your mineral line. It's really not that big of a deal. Like, there's so many different directions this Banshee can come from. So he will scan to kill it, but he needs every mule.
It's still a little bit sloppy. He could have done better with the Banshee than that, but it looks like he was trying to multitask at home. He's actually getting his economy online. Another Banshee coming across the map, and it feels like Polt may just be making Banshees non-stop for a bit.
The real question is, how long does MMA wait before he just attacks? Okay, there's the medevacs loading up, so I guess this is the answer to that. And he's going to probably make just one more attempt at a drop. Banshee's in his base. Medevac's moving out. There's really nothing that MMA can do anymore. Like, Polt's locked down his bases far too well. He's even getting turrets. He's had these. He's had a good number of Vikings for a while. And with the Banshees, even if he got sieged up outside of his base, like, the Banshees are going to be there to pick off the tanks because he just used the only scan that he has. And here comes this drop. Army's perfectly positioned for Polt.
Oh boy, looks like he's going to go over here out of range of any siege tanks at the moment. That's going to allow his siege tanks to get into position, and that's going to be very messy to clean up. But as you were saying, Nathanius, any Banshees that he has left can really help out here. Yep,
no scans are available. So, like, at worst case scenario, worst case scenario is he's pretty much already lost this game. But, you know, like, best case is that he loses his tanks and picks up his Marines and does some weird micro, but then the Vikings come back into play, and this will be cleaned up. Polt still has 2 orbitals, still has the ability to get double scan. There were some other forces for MMA outside the cliff, but those really aren't that big of a threat. And yeah, MMA pretty much has absolutely nothing left. He's just like poking. He's like, is there a way I can win this game off of one base? And Polt's like,
no, absolutely not.
No, not really.
No, please exit the game.
No, I think they heard your prediction though. They're shooting for it, man.
Yeah, the 18 minutes. I told you.
Yeah.
You
I'd still say this game
players.
was over at 13, but.
Well, I know these pro gamers, Nathanius. I know they want to stay. This is one of the most important terms of the entire year. They aren't going to give up that easily.
Fair enough. But I'm mostly just curious, like, at what point MMA is going to realize, like, I really can't break this 2-base Terran with my mined out main, and maybe he'll float over. I don't know.
Well, Banshee coming in once again.
I mean, I guess there's not really like that many minerals left to mine, so you kill the SCVs, and it's like, well, what are they really going to do anyway? Like, these ones are just hanging out. There's the scan. Getting air control is like the one way that MMA can try to make some sort of slow push work with denying vision, but even just having 2 orbitals already solves that problem because Polt has scans. Like, you're not just gonna break him like that. The only thing that Polt's waiting for is stim, and then you can move out, catch this army since his is going to be significantly larger, and he's pretty much got it in the bag.
Already up 30 supply right now. 30 supply, a base, more SCVs, better upgrades. MMA has got to just make its final push here.
Yeah, this should pretty much be MMA's last-ditch effort, although I feel like I've said that a few times already. He's really trying to find somewhere to crack open Polt, but it's just not seeming like a possibility. Like, as soon as you see those Vikings over your army, you're going to naturally think, oh, I should probably scan. And he actually killed the tank because it was in vision anyway. He has more Vikings than his opponent, and the Vikings that MMA has are all weak. So Polt's going to clean all of this up. So maybe he won't get the medevacs because the Marines are under them. But without that air control, there's no way he's going to be able to advance on this position.
You can't attack with less units into more units, especially in TVT.
Yeah. And he's landing his only Vikings. Like, this is going to be the difference maker, and maybe drop something on the tank. But there's 2 tanks. So I think at this point, based on both of our time predictions, MMA has really dragged this one out.
Yes, certainly has. I think this game was pretty much over at 18 minutes, but, you know.
I even gave you a number that wasn't the one I said. I think when he dropped him and killed all that and got the command center, like, he had it in the bag. Tries to drop, and his tanks were already in vision range because that tech lab, the key tech lab to give vision, really allowed him to make a phenomenal defense of this so far. And yeah, MMA's Marines step forward, get killed by tanks, and he's got 2 Vikings and 1 tank to try to win this game here for him. And at the same time, Polt walks in and kills all of MMA's remaining SCVs.
GG, and that game, 20 minutes, 30 seconds or so. Of course, it is 20% faster than real time, which is what I was talking about, so very close to 18 minutes.
Very, very close. I mean, I think it was closer to 1.4 times, so it might actually be closer to 16 or 15 minutes. You know. We can debate the semantics later.
Yeah,
What matters is Polt is
he's up 1-0,
1-0,
man. Yeah, we are looking towards maybe a gigantic tie in this group.
Yeah. So like the weirdest part about it was like talking about the early game scenarios. Generally, they favor players like MMA more. But Polt's Hellion, seeing the medevac coming, Polt actually had less Marines loaded up in his medevac than MMA did. If he moves out across the map and they get into some sort of weird, we both kill all each other's workers situation, I think MMA comes out ahead.
Yeah.
But Polt being able to make that defense, which he would not have been able to make had he not gone gas first, really allowed him to just ricochet off of that. The counterattack with 2 medevacs is not something many players do, but for this instance, it was the perfect move.
Yeah, well, the next map going to be merry-go-round. What do you predict for the build openers here?
I think the same thing works pretty well. You still have a really large main. It feels larger than Catalina. You have that lip towards the ramp, and if your units, it's like, well, the Banshee could come into my main, and then I want my Raven and my Marines or my Viking near my mineral line, or they could drop on my ramp, so I want everything up front, and the distance between your ramp and where your main command center actually is on merry-go-round is not quite that close. So you can get into some really awkward situations. Like, I still think the gas first rules, and this is like the map where you do it. Like this and Catalina are like the 2 maps where you always do gas first.
Well, I do think we're going to see that anyways. I think that's just kind of the style of these guys in TVT at the moment. So we'll be getting to that game pretty quickly and figuring that out. But what do you think after watching that game, right? Because everyone was saying, well, except for me, of course, that MMA would win this match. And, you know, he has been looking a bit better than Polt overall. Obviously, he got 2nd place in the World Championships at BlizzCon. But after watching specifically that TVT, sure, Polt scouted that, but don't you think the rest of his play was very solid as well? Is he looking on par with MMA?
Yeah, well, I always like Polt if he can get to that good mid-game stage. I think there was a point in the game where when MMA, like, he was down on SCVs, but when he got that last attack in that, like, kind of sort of evened it out, where he was up maybe down just like 11 to 17, it's a tough spot to be in, but if you've managed to, he still had some units active out on the map, so you try to keep Polt in his base and expand, be behind, make a play later on. Like, Terran versus Terran is one of those maps where you always have an opportunity to make a play. But trying to force it on one base, like, Polt's just too good for that.
Well, we'll see if he's too good for that. Once again, the game has started, so we're going to jump into map number 2. If Polt can win this, massive tie incoming, Nathaniel. It's going to be pretty exciting to see how that goes.
He's going to put us all in a knot. This guy, the one man who can stop him, the red Terran player in the Northeast, representing Team Acer, he is MMA. And the man who would put us into that incredibly awkward Tyratosis, the blue Terran player in the Northwest, representing Cooler Master Storm, he is Polt.
Well, I got to tell you, Nathanius, I love awkward and I love ties.
Yeah, these 2 guys, it's really interesting to watch, like, some of the games that they've played for TVT, like MMA, who had this really sick, right, I don't necessarily sick, but like, it's a really interesting series versus Bomber, and like, Bomber's had a couple of weird games against both these players. We like threw away a lot of medevacs and still won anyway, like medevacs full of units, but they're both very scrappy in that mid-game phase. And by the way, we have gas first again from both players. I think anything else on this map is like borderline suicide.
Well, yeah, it looks like just completely mirrored builds right now. So, I mean, I think
this is the thing to do.
This is the thing to do. So, if you know that your opponent's going gas first, okay, let's just say you're blind countering as hard as you can. You're playing merry-go-round, your opponent's going to go gas first. What exactly do you want to do with your gas first to make sure that you have at least a little edge?
Like, I feel like it even goes deeper than that. Like, going gas first doesn't give away enough of what you're doing aside from the fast factory. Like, there are players out there who will try, like, especially on the ladder, like you gas first them and you win, and the next game they're like, well, Proxy Marauder or Reaper. But these builds are actually, like, players have figured out there are ways to hold any TVT cheese, like, and anything with slow units, like, because if you open up with the Hellions or the Banshee, then you instantly win because you're ahead on tech, and it's really tricky. Like, if you know that your opponent's going to do the build MMA does, you actually do what Polt did. You just open up really heavy, you get that reactor, and you skip anything, because the whole reason why like you would get the reactor every game if you knew your opponent wasn't going Reaper, because there's nothing that they can do to punish it, and it gives you the same amount of units when your medevac completes. You just have that tech option to actually get more Marines later on.
So maybe Polt is taking like a little bit of a risk, a nod towards how well MMA has been playing lately?
Yeah, I feel like Polt actually had the more aggressive build the last game, just because he opened up with the second medevac, which is highly unusual. Like when you like most players will go Viking after they get the drop set up. Like that's something that I like to do, because if you save the scan, you have a scan usually around the time that your Viking finishes. So the Banshee comes in, your Viking buys some time, and you know, in a magical world, you are able to kill the Banshee, and then your drop kills everything that they have at home. But going for the second medevac puts you in a, like if MMA had gone Banshee the last game and Polt didn't see it and he leaves with that drop, like he doesn't really have anything aside from slow Marines to try to kill a Banshee.
And that doesn't work. I've seen that before. It's brutal.
Not really, no. It's quite painful to deal with. So this game, MMA, is it's looking like, Banshee opening, and Polt is actually doing the same thing that he did the last game.
And that actually makes me a bit nervous for Polt, because if there's one thing that MMA is good at, it's learning during a best of 3 or a best of 5 or whatever. Like, he watches what you're doing and he adapts to it. So if Polt just keeps doing the same build, I feel like that's something that's going to give MMA an edge.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly curious to know what Polt builds from the start port after this, because he has enough resources to start a Viking. Like you'll see, he's got his Hellions here, but there's not really anything at home to defend against the Banshee. Most of the time, these builds can force the Banshee to stay home, but MMA's actually taken a note out of Bomber's book with the way that he's laid out his building, so he can keep everything inside, waiting for that drop. And yeah, this could actually get pretty tricky, because the Banshee just leaves later, but Polt can't get his Hellions in because he left them all at home.
Well, kind of on defensive duty. He does have the Marines in the main base right now, though, and it looks like they're going to go to work. There is, of course, a Widowmine outside that wall. I think that he's going to be careful not go up there anyways.
Yeah, this actually, like, this could have been really nice for Polt if he was able to get up there and actually like, kill the Marines, because with the medevac, you shouldn't lose really any, maybe tops 1. Getting the Hellions over, though, Polt did go once again for that second medevac, and he's now bringing over the Hellions he left behind defensively. But yeah, so he got an engineering bay to compensate for this, but his natural should be delayed, possibly canceled by this Banshee. And now it's all on MMA to defend, but he's moving his infrastructure around right now.
Oh boy, he does not have a lot of units. He's going double command center right now.
MMA may have expanded a little bit too quickly. All these Hellions should have no trouble at all. Well, that certainly changes things up a little bit.
Yeah, that was a fantastic Widowmine hit there, killing 2 and like 9/10 of a Hellion.
Yeah, but that is the tricky part, is he's actually losing his barracks. Polt's like, yeah, I'm not gonna be baited into your SCV pull, because he knows that MMA has to bring his workers through a choke point if he wants to attack them here. And now, I still think Polt got what he needed. Like, MMA got his command center so much faster. You're like, normally, yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah, I got the command center. But in this instance, he also went for a third command center, which was a little bit
greedy. But it looked like, you know, he had a good defense for a little bit there. He had a good base layout. But
in a matchup that oftentimes these days sits on one base for the first, 10 minutes, going for third CC against somebody who goes gas first is just it's a little bit of a risky maneuver.
Well, that is it, and Polt will win the series 2-0.
Not bad. I think his build very interesting. The way that he set himself up to handle it, going for the same play twice. Like, it's actually not quite that bad at all. The way that it seemed like his Banshee, I don't think he got actually a scout on where Polt was for his game. Because that Banshee definitely could have gone over the top side of the map, and like, unless he feared a Viking being there, there's no reason to take such a long way around. Like, he was not able to force Polt to keep that second drop at home.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point there. But, I gotta say, I like the way that Polt plays, especially for a matchup like this. Like, he keeps the pressure on. I don't feel like Polt is a guy that goes, like, too far in one direction with greed or with aggression. Like, as we were talking about earlier, he doesn't normally double proxy racks in TVZ. He doesn't oftentimes do something like what we saw from MMA there, double command center. And I feel like, he is such a mid-game player, like you've been saying. He wants to get into that range, and if you go too far in one direction, he might just kill you early anyways.
Yeah, seems like Polt did a pretty good job of adjusting his builds off of the gas first, because, there's lots of Terran players that tried to make other strategies work, and they got wrecked for it. So there's a reason why pretty much everybody goes for these strategies these days.
Apollo in control. What do you think about this series?
Guys, I don't know if you've been watching the groups and how it's working out, but we are very, very close to having a 2-win, 2-loss, 5-way draw between all 5 players.
We should take a look at the groups, actually.
It's actually insane.
All 5.
All 5 players.
Is that even possible? I guess that is possible, right?
Snoot's turned it around, and he lost his first 2 games. He then beat Impact 2-0, and is currently leading against Jack G 1-0 as well. If he wins that and goes 2-0, it's a 5-way 2-2 record. Then it goes to the internal decision, the map scores and stuff.
Yep.
I think it works out to be Polt goes through in first place, Snoot in second. If it's all 2-2-2-2-2-2-2-2. And then the other 3 players.
Does Snoot have to 2-0 though?
Huh? Yeah, Snoot has to 2-0 to make this happen, which it's...
Well, he already did.
No, it's not over yet. It's still playing.
Oh, he's 1-0 Jockey, right?
Yeah, 1-0.
Continue on with real things.
So if the 5-way 2v2, 2-2-2-2-2 happens, then it's Polt and Snoot go through first and second because of the map scores. Then the other 3 players are all tied, and it goes into a 3-way best-of-1 rotation to find out which player goes through, because they're tied in map score, they're tied in head-to-head, all 3-way.
Wow.
And we have to play like a...
And we've seen those in tournaments in the past sometimes go a few rounds before you even get a...
Yeah, it's like, I think the way it works, you have to win 2 in a row, right? And then...
Yeah.
And then you're through.
That's a really, really awkward position to be in for these guys who, you know, it's... I guess the way that the groups are split up, it's not like they've been here all day, but, you know, it's getting a little bit later. You've been playing out your groups. You already played your 4 matches. That's tough.
It gets tough. Well, before we get to that scenario, let's see if we get there. We do want to hear from our current TVT champion alongside Smix.
Thank you very much, In Control. I am here with Captain America himself after his victory over MMA. You spoke to me earlier and you said that you felt that you would do well against MMA because you think your style would be good against his. Did you actually expect that it would be a 2-0 like this, though?
Not exactly, because my condition is too bad. I mean, I arrived in this city yesterday morning and I fell asleep right after, but there was no heater in my room, so I think I got a cold. So I feel so bad, but actually it was kind of lucky. I could have seen his medivacs moving, so I could have reacted so well, and that won the game.
Well, I noticed right after the game, you went over to him and you guys were talking, and I know different players react to losses in different ways, but what is a conversation after you just beat him like?
Well, if I eliminated him, then I wouldn't go there, but I was pretty much sure he's advanced, no matter what, so first or second, third. And I was just wondering who's gonna get the first, because there is a possibility every player gets 2 and 2. So I don't know.
And speaking of that possible intense tie-way scenario, did you expect, when you first looked at the group, did you expect that there would be this potential tie, or did you have a certain order in mind?
I didn't expect this kind of thing at all. I mean, I was sure like it could be hard to get the first place. I mean, it could be 4-0 or 3-1, but I didn't expect the last player can get 2 and 2, but still out of the tournament.
All right, I'm going to ask you the hard-hitting questions then. Who did you think would be the 3 players that make it out of this group?
I don't know. Zakji is favored, I think. If he wins against Snoot, then he advances. But if he loses, then I don't know. But I'm cheering for Snoot, so hopefully me, Snoot, and someone advance.
You're cheering for Snoot. Why is that?
I like him.
It's a good enough answer. Well, thank you very much, Polt, for this interview. We'll find out what happens with that last match with Jack Chi and Snoot, and if that tie-way will appear. Before then, let's head back to the desk. I believe Jeff is the host at the moment, so Jeff, take it away.